Hey, party people. Today we're going to talk about how to develop or change your fashion illustration style. Number one, I'm going to let you in on something artists don't like to admit. Their style starts with things that they think they're not good at rendering. Okay. Some people will throw themselves into their weaknesses and some will just continue to avoid them forever. I hate drawing faces. I'm okay with faces, but not the best. And because it has not been necessary for me as a designer to be great at faces, I didn't put in the effort to improve. Some illustrators aren't great with anatomy, especially hands. Some struggle with color combinations. Some struggle with wet on wet technique, and some will avoid those things like the plague, and some will just keep practicing those until it's their favorite thing. Okay. List your strengths and weaknesses, things you love to draw, techniques you love and want to improve upon, things you would like to never draw again, things you'd like to learn more. The point is to examine yourself as an illustrator and think about where you'd like to be, what you'd like to be better at, things you don't care about. Go look at a lot of work. Okay? I have 2 Pinterest boards full of fashion illustrations. One is fashion illustration and the other is called design communication. The design communication board is specifically for fashion illustration that is detailed enough to express designs accurately. I'll post the links to my Pinterest boards in the description box below. Think about also what kind of personality, vibe, mood you want to convey with your work. Do you want your work to look dark and moody, light and playful, sexy, youthful, fun, bright? Also think about the goal of your work. If you're trying to express designs accurately for your design portfolio, you do have to make sure that your illustrations reflect a certain level of detail. If you want to be a children's book illustrator, think about what works for those kinds of books. Go ahead and make a mood board of styles you love, some words that remind you of your artistic intentions to help you visualize and hold true to your vision as you practice. Number 2. Play around with different media to determine your true love. And you don't have to pick one. You can create cool styles with combinations of media or just do different kinds of illustrations. If you watch my tutorial interview with illustrator Brianna Kranz, you can see her play with pastels layered with watercolor. I'll link that below as well. Or you can look at some works and pick some you like and figure out what media those works use. You do not have to buy a 50-piece set of markers or, a dozen tubes of paint to play around. Okay? Markers are good for fast work. And markers are not like fast, okay? They're meant to be scanned in and printed and not great for permanent paintings hung up on the wall. I use markers for design sketches, practice sketches, and they live in dark file cabinets. Watercolor and gouache are great for a ton of different techniques, from dry brush, big washes of color, wet on wet blends, and their light fastness actually depends on individual colors. Like every single tube of paint will have a light fastness rating. Pencils have that very specific texture and that specific color, and you really can't get it from anything else. I have a lot of videos on art supplies, which I'll link to in the description box below. Number 3, listen. Painting students throughout history would sit in front of famous works and try to copy them as exactly as possible to learn technique. They would try to capture the brushwork, the textures, the manipulation and composition of light, the color usage, everything. Okay. And, you can still spot painters in museums sitting in front of famous paintings trying to replicate the techniques. This is copying as a learning tool, not stealing an aesthetic or business plan. Okay. You need to explore. Pick some works that really call to you and do the same thing. Copy the illustration as closely as possible. It is not enough to look closely. The learning is in the doing. Listen to me again. The learning is in the doing. There is so much more to be absorbed in the actual action of rendering than can be expressed in words. Previously, I had said that we should think about what we want to express in a new illustration style. In my teaching work, I use a very specific, very detailed academic style of rendering to teach technique. I even use poses that show off the design the most clearly and effectively. In my personal illustrations, I'd love my work to shift to a sexier vibe, a little loosey-goosey, a little dirty, gestural. I really want to loosen up. I chose this one to emulate, and I can't find the name of the artist anywhere. Do let me know if you know who the artist is, but I absolutely love the loose gestural quality of this boudoir scene. It looks kind of like it's easy, but you really have to understand shape and line and really commit your line to paper with a style like this. No erasing, no planning. You just gotta put your marker down and go. And I deliberately chose this, which is something so far removed from my everyday rendering style, to force myself to loosen up. Number 4, pick one of your own illustrations to rework. I chose this drawing I did as a gift for a friend who wanted a sketch of, and I quote, chubby hotties in lingerie. My friend has the original. This is just a printout of the scan I made before shipping it off. And I'm going to re-illustrate this sketch in the new style and try to stick to the new style as closely as possible. Okay. Again, mimicry as a learning tool, not as an aesthetic. Okay. I'm not going to lie. I like the two on the far left best, but also I like those two on the far left best in my original sketch as well. So it might not even just be about the style. Number 5. And now I'm going to re-illustrate the sketch again using the new style, but changing it a bit to suit my taste better, to incorporate things that I already like about my illustration style. Okay, I'm going to add a second marker color to the figures to create more depth. I want to add more details and texture with a fine liner and different thicknesses of markers. And as I was working, I realized at some point that I was using the wrong side of the marker paper. So on this last one, I switched. And then upon analyzing the original, I think they were just they were using a drier marker to get more of that scratchy marker brushstroke, or they were using a drier paper. Okay, marker paper is finished with something that lets the marker sit on top a little bit more, doesn't really soak into the paper. Whereas I think this person used a regular drawing paper that gave it more of that scratchy, dry look, which I might want to experiment with next time. And there you go. Boom, you have a new style. No. Like anything else, you don't develop an illustration aesthetic overnight. This is a process for you to get started, to learn about yourself and practice new ways of illustrating. And you should practice this process many times with different illustrations. Listen, if your first experiments end in disaster, and trust me, I don't love how every single one of these turned out. All right. But don't worry. Remember, hashtag if your first one sucks, you're right on track, because you put in the effort and you are miles ahead of everyone else who just sits there and talks about it. All right. And it's hard because it's hard, not because there's anything wrong with you. And perfectionism is stupid. Keep exploring, keep practicing, keep doing the things you love, ditch the things you don't, and your style will start to emerge. And, even just your everyday skills of line quality and drawing good shapes and things will get better just through practice. Okay, that's it for today. Please give this video a thumbs up if you learned something new today. I have a lot of links to art supplies and illustration techniques in my description box, so check those out, and I'll see you in the next video.